My mom chose my brother over me, so I built a life without them, a story of pain, rejection and survival. When a mother's love isn't equal, one child is left to fight alone, and discover their own strength. I was 13 the day I realized my mom didn't love me the way she loved my brother. It wasn't just about who got the bigger slice of cake or the better Christmas gift. It was the way her eyes lit up when he walked into a room, how her voice softened when she called his name, and how her hand brushed mine away whenever I tried to reach for her attention. My brother, Daniel, was the golden child. He played basketball, got good grades, and made friends easily. Mom treated his report cards like gold medals. Every B+ he brought home was celebrated with pizza night and laughter. Me? When I brought home straight A's, she barely looked up from her phone. I told myself it didn't matter. That if I worked hard enough, if I became good enough, one day she'd notice me. But deep down, I knew I was chasing something I'd never catch. And the worst part? Daniel noticed too. He wore his crown proudly, sometimes reminding me, with a smirk, that he was Mom's favorite. It stung, but I stayed quiet. Until the night everything changed. It was a rainy Thursday. I was in my room finishing an essay when I heard voices downstairs, Mom's sharp, angry tone mixed with Daniel's defensive mumbling. Something in me froze. Arguments weren't unusual in our house, but this one felt different. I crept down the stairs, careful not to make the old wood creak. Mom's voice cut through the living room like a knife. "I'll always protect you, Daniel. No matter what you do." That sentence echoed in my ears long after the fight ended. And in that moment, I finally understood, I wasn't just second best. I wasn't even on the list. From that day forward, something inside me shifted. I tried to pretend her words didn't matter, but they dug into me like splinters I couldn't pull out. At school the next day, I stared at my paper full of red corrections, and all I could think about was how she wouldn't care. Daniel could fail an entire class and she'd still call him her brilliant boy. That weekend, it showed again. Mom promised she'd take me shopping for new shoes, but when Daniel mentioned a basketball tournament, her plans with me vanished. I stood by the door with my worn sneakers in hand, while she rushed out with him, yelling, "We'll do it another time." They never did. I remember sitting on the porch, the cold seeping through the cracks of the wooden steps, and whispering to myself, "I'll never be enough." The words felt heavy, but at least they were honest. It was around then that I started keeping a notebook under my bed. Not a diary, I hated that word. It was more like a ledger of every time she chose him over me. Missed birthday dinner. Ignored my art contest. Forgot my piano recital. Page after page, I recorded it all. At first, I thought maybe writing it down would make the pain lighter. But instead, it became a reminder. A quiet declaration to myself, if I couldn't matter to her, I'd have to matter to me. Still, I was just a kid. And no matter how many times I told myself to stop caring, every time she hugged him, laughed with him, or defended him, I felt like I was being erased a little more. Until one night, when Daniel pushed me too far, and Mom showed me just how invisible I really was. It was late, the kind of night when the house is so quiet you can hear the refrigerator humming. I was curled up on the couch with a blanket, watching some rerun on TV. Daniel came in, tossing his backpack onto the floor like it was his kingdom and he owned it. "Move," he said flatly. "There's space," I muttered, scooting over. But that wasn't enough for him. He yanked the blanket off me and plopped down, stretching his legs so I was shoved to the edge of the couch. "Seriously?" I snapped, trying to tug the blanket back. He smirked. "What's the matter? Mom not here to save you?" Those words hit harder than his shove. He knew exactly where to cut. I lost it. I pushed him back, harder than I ever had. For a second, his face twisted in shock, and then he shoved me so hard I hit the floor. The sound of my elbow cracking against the wooden boards echoed through the room. Tears stung my eyes, but before I could get up, Mom stormed in. My chest filled with hope, stupid, desperate hope that for once, she'd see what he was doing. But she didn't even ask what happened. She rushed straight to Daniel. "Are you okay, baby?" she said, cupping his face as if he were the victim. "He started it," Daniel muttered, not even looking at me. Mom's glare found me like a spotlight. "Why do you always have to cause problems? Can't you just leave your brother alone?" I opened my mouth, but no words came out. My throat felt tight, my hands trembling. She didn't even wait for my answer, she just told me to go to my room. And I did. I went upstairs, shut the door, and sat on the floor, clutching that notebook of mine. I added one more line at the bottom of the page: "She chose him again." That was the night I made myself a promise: if my family didn't want me, one day, I'd build a life that didn't need them at all. The next morning, I didn't speak to either of them. Not out of some grand rebellion, I just didn't have anything left to say. Daniel strutted around the kitchen like nothing happened, bragging about practice and laughing at his own jokes. Mom poured his cereal, kissed his forehead, and acted like I wasn't even sitting 2 feet away. I stared at my empty bowl, the silence burning in my chest. That was when I decided, if they were going to treat me like I was invisible, I'd become invisible on purpose. I stopped asking Mom for rides. I stopped waiting at the dinner table. I found a corner in the library at school where no one bothered me, and that's where I spent most afternoons. Books became my escape, my fuel. They were proof that there were other lives, other worlds, beyond this house where I always felt like a guest. When teachers praised me, I held on to those words like lifelines. "Excellent work. You've got potential." They weren't Mom's words, but they mattered more. Every compliment felt like a secret armor I was building piece by piece. Still, nights were the hardest. I'd lie awake listening to Mom and Daniel laugh from the living room, while my room stayed dark and quiet. I wondered if she ever noticed that I stopped trying. But even if she didn't, I was starting to notice something: the less I leaned on her, the lighter I felt. It wasn't freedom yet. But it was the first taste of what freedom might feel like. And then, when I turned 16, I got my first job. That's when everything truly started to change. It wasn't glamorous, just a cashier job at a grocery store near school, but to me, it was everything. It was proof that I could stand on my own, even if it was just minimum wage and a stiff back after long shifts. I remember the first time I held my paycheck in my hands. It wasn't much, but it was mine. No one could take it away, no one could belittle it. I walked home that night with my chest a little taller, already thinking about how I'd use it. Mom, of course, barely reacted. "Don't let it get in the way of your homework," she said flatly, before turning her attention back to Daniel, who was complaining about needing new shoes for basketball. She promised him she'd take him shopping the next day. I didn't even bother reminding her that I'd been wearing the same sneakers for 2 years. Instead, I bought myself a new pair, with my own money. They weren't flashy, but when I laced them up, it felt like I was stepping into a different version of myself. Slowly, I started building a life outside of that house. Coworkers became friends. I saved up for little things: new clothes, a used laptop, even my own phone plan, so I didn't have to beg Mom to pay mine. Every dollar was a brick in the wall I was quietly building between me and them. And yet, there were moments when it still hurt. Like the night of Daniel's big game, when Mom dragged me along, cheering so loudly her voice cracked. When he scored, she jumped up and hugged him like he was her entire world. I clapped politely, sitting alone in the stands, and wondered if she even remembered I was there. That night, I wrote in my notebook again, "She doesn't see me. But one day, she will." I didn't know it yet, but that day was coming sooner than I thought. The shift came in small, almost invisible ways. By the time I was 17, I wasn't just working, I was thriving. I'd been promoted to shift supervisor, and my boss often trusted me more than people twice my age. I kept stacking up savings, every paycheck another quiet victory. Meanwhile, Daniel was starting to slip. His grades fell, his coach benched him a few games, and the golden shine he'd always carried began to dull. But Mom refused to see it. She kept blaming teachers, coaches, unfair rules. Every excuse was lined up to protect him. I watched it all from the sidelines, silent. A part of me felt bitter satisfaction, like the universe was finally balancing the scales. But another part of me ached. Not for him, but for myself. Because even as his cracks showed, Mom still clung to him like he was perfect. One evening, I came home from work to find them arguing in the kitchen. Daniel had been caught skipping class, and the school called home. I lingered in the hallway, listening. "I just made a mistake," he said, his voice defensive. "A mistake?" Mom's voice was sharp, but then it softened. "You're better than this. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I believe in you, Daniel." Those words sliced me open. I had spent years working myself raw, praying to hear something like that. And he got it after breaking rules, after failing. I walked quietly to my room, sat on the floor, and stared at the growing stack of pay stubs in my drawer. Proof that I didn't need her belief to keep going. Proof that I could believe in myself, even if she never would. And that night, I decided something important. As soon as I turned 18, I was leaving. Not just the house, them. The countdown to 18 became my secret fuel. Every double shift, every hour at the register, every saved dollar had a purpose. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was preparing my escape. I kept it quiet. Mom thought my long hours were just me being difficult, and Daniel barely noticed anything that wasn't about him. That suited me fine. While they bickered about his missed practices or his excuses for bad grades, I was quietly building a future none of them knew about. On my birthday, I didn't ask for cake or presents. Instead, I took the bus to the bank and opened an account in my own name, transferring every cent I'd saved. The teller slid the papers across the counter, and I signed with a shaking hand. That signature felt like the first step into my real life. A month later, I found a tiny studio apartment across town. It wasn't much, peeling paint, a leaky faucet, walls thin enough to hear the neighbors fight, but it was mine. I didn't even tell Mom I was leaving until the night I packed my things. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes cold. "So you're just going to walk out? After everything I've done for you?" I almost laughed. Everything? I thought about every recital she'd skipped, every meal she never cooked, every wound she ignored. "You made your choice a long time ago," I said quietly. "Now I'm making mine." Daniel muttered something under his breath, probably another smug comment, but I didn't even look at him. I picked up my bags, walked out the front door, and didn't look back. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Scared, yes, but free. What I didn't know was that freedom came with its own challenges. And I was about to find out just how much strength I really had. Freedom tasted sweet, but it was far from easy. The first few weeks in my apartment felt like stepping into another universe. No one to yell at me, no one to ignore me, but also no one to make sure the bills were paid, the fridge was full, or the lights stayed on. I stretched every dollar I earned, learning to live on ramen noodles and thrift store finds. My coworkers sometimes teased me for always packing lunches, but I didn't care. Every sacrifice was worth the price of independence. There were nights I lay awake in that drafty little studio, staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering if I'd made a mistake. Part of me still longed for the warmth of a family, even a broken one. But then I remembered the look in Mom's eyes when she defended Daniel over me, and the ache hardened into resolve. Slowly, I built a rhythm. Work. Save. Study. Repeat. I enrolled in night classes at the community college, paying out of pocket, one semester at a time. Professors noticed my determination, and for the first time in my life, I felt seen for more than my failures. Meanwhile, Mom and Daniel barely called. When they did, it was never to ask how I was, it was to ask for favors. Can you pick Daniel up? Can you lend us some money? I learned to say no. Each no was another brick in the wall I was building to protect myself. I wasn't their shadow anymore. I was starting to become someone in my own right. And then, out of nowhere, life handed me a chance to prove it, not just to them, but to myself. That chance came when my manager pulled me aside one evening after a long shift. I thought I was in trouble, but instead, he told me about a new position opening, assistant manager. Twice the pay, real benefits, and the kind of stability I had only dreamed about. You've got the work ethic, he said. Apply. You deserve it. I went home that night buzzing with energy. For once, someone saw my worth without me having to scream for it. I filled out the application, heart pounding, and a month later I was standing in front of my team wearing a new badge with my name on it. It was the first time I called my life mine without hesitation. Rent came easier, groceries no longer meant choosing between eggs or bread, and I even managed to save for a second-hand car. Piece by piece, I was constructing the life Mom had never imagined for me. But success has a way of drawing attention, even the kind you thought you'd left behind. One evening, as I was closing the store, I saw her. Mom. Standing by the entrance, older, more tired than I remembered. Daniel wasn't with her. She looked at me like she wasn't sure if she had the right to. For a moment, time froze. All those years of being invisible, of fighting for scraps of affection, collapsed into that single glance. She opened her mouth, hesitated, and finally said, "You've done well for yourself." It should have felt like victory. Instead, all I felt was a hollow ache. Because deep down, I realized I didn't need her recognition anymore. But she hadn't come just to congratulate me. And I was about to hear the reason she was really standing there. She shifted from foot to foot, as if the floor itself burned beneath her shoes. Finally, she blurted it out. "Daniel's in trouble. He needs help." For a moment, I just stared. That old, familiar ache pressed against my ribs. Even now, after all the years, after all the choices, she had only come because of him. What kind of help? I asked, though my voice was sharper than I intended. She looked down, ashamed. He lost his job. He's been drinking. I don't know what to do anymore. I thought, maybe you could talk to him. You've always been stronger than he is. Stronger. The word landed heavy. I had begged for her to see me that way as a child, and now she was offering it like an afterthought. Not because she finally valued me, but because Daniel had fallen. I took a long breath. The old me would have jumped at the chance, desperate to earn her love through sacrifice. But I wasn't that child anymore. "I can't save him," I said quietly. "And I won't give up the life I've built to fix the messes you both ignored." Her lips parted, eyes glistening with something between regret and disbelief. She whispered my name like it was foreign on her tongue. I picked up my bag, walked past her, and locked the store doors behind me. The night air felt sharp and clean as I stepped into the parking lot. For the first time, I wasn't the forgotten child, the second choice, or the shadow of my brother. I was simply myself, whole, independent, and free. And that was worth more than any apology she could ever give.